just the question about that, about SNAP, if we, maybe people who may be seeing this, or what is SNAP, and how can it be improved, and what is being, I know there's, on the table now that we're all asking for it to be improved, but what now during the emergency, and maybe even past the emergency, what are things that have always been a problem?
The SNAP that comes in will last a short time. Not everybody in there may be covered under SNAP or under the commodities. They get a choice of making at times SNAP, or of receiving SNAP or commodities, right? This will last a short time. So our food program comes in at a time when these subsidies are running out.
And Angelina, the things when you think about policy shifts, so there are a couple really immediate ones. One is, it always strikes me that in an emergency, we can have an emergency SNAP format to quickly do a one sheet, you're in, you're good, but we can't do that in normal life. So one of those is, how do we get to make it less burdensome on the person who is seeking food? I think the second is, how do we raise that minimum to $30? That's another thing that we're trying to move, is how do you move that up so that individuals can have access to more food? And the third is hot food in retailers. So they can't go to a hot food bar and they can't get a roasted chicken, and walk out with it with their SNAP dollars. So we have seen a 300% increase in applications in Massachusetts in the last few weeks. So it is, and among elders, we're seeing 100% increase among their utilization. So it's an absolutely awesome program, like school meals. How do you get to universal school meal? It just doesn't make sense. So some of those things, this may be the opportunity to push those forward. And some of the requests from the legislature, and especially, or the Congress, and especially if there is a fourth round of stimulus, that would be the opportunity where a voice and the advocates could have an impression to move those things at this time when we might not have been able to move them before.
And everybody on the call should know that that's something that Angelina Jolie is actually weighing in on with a letter to the congressional leadership for this next package, which I think will get some attention. So
hopefully
thanks for doing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can I just share a little bit, just to demonstrate? So within SNAP, there's something called the fourth week famine. And so families typically run out of their food stamp allocation before the end of the month. And so one of the things that we saw in San Francisco is on our second week of meals, which was around the March 20th, we did 41,000 meals that week. And by the following week, which was the end of March, we did 90,000 meals. And so that's how much the spike in need went. And that's because food stamps ran out. And so that's what happens every month. And then you put the pandemic on top of it. That's the increase that we saw. So the number of meals that we served more than doubled for that. And then you put in particular the roadblocks that this administration has put on to food stamps since they've come in. And you think about public charge is one of the things that has happened, and which in particular has impacted our families. So if you are an immigrant and you're trying to go through the legal process of becoming an American citizen, if you need food stamps and you apply for food stamps, you run the risk of not being able to become a citizen of this country. And that is something the administration went ahead, I believe, and still put into effect. So you cannot get food stamps even in the middle of this pandemic and still try to become a citizen in this country.
I hope people can hear that from you now, that is different. And to be aware of what the administration has done and how it's affecting people. And what I'm hearing from you is what you're all seeing, it sounds like to me, and why it's so important for people to be aware of your work and hear about it, is that you shouldn't be, the government, not only from before, should have done enough for you not to be needed, right? That's what we all say in humanitarian fields. We all want to not have to do our work, right? We want it to be handled in a way, because it shouldn't be, you shouldn't have to be filling in these gaps. These gaps should not be so wide, especially in this country. But what it sounds like is that as the needs have grown with the pandemic, they're really not being met. And so your work is not only the work you usually do, but it is growing and growing, and you're filling in gaps that are going to be impossible to meet if the government, or probably already impossible in some ways with everything you're up against, to to get to everybody, if the government doesn't start making strong changes right now, and especially with all the people who've now lost their job.
You know, one of the things that we're very focused on with the No Kid Hungry campaign is, has always been, how do we figure out whatever barrier exists between a hungry child or family and a healthy meal, and how do we knock that down? You know, one of the kind of commonalities of in this conversation is that, you know, by and large, we have the food in this country, but there have been lots of obstacles for people accessing it in ways they need to before COVID, and now even greater obstacles. So one of the things I would just like to invite folks to do, um, our job at Share Our Strength has been to generate resources for those of you on the front line. Angelina Jolie's been playing an indispensable role for us in helping us generate resources by raising this awareness. If there's obstacles that you think we should be focusing on, you know, we've talked about SNAP and the importance of changing that, and we'll circulate Angelina Jolie's letter to everybody once that is finalized and sent. But if there's other obstacles that you think we should be focusing on, if there's other ways we could be helping your organizations, please don't hesitate to push us.
I think needs to be looked at is increasing the income limits for SNAP. Florida, it's 200%, I believe, of poverty. And though a lot of people are unemployed, there's still a lot of people that are working and are suffering because, you know, now they're thwarted into a single income family, and, you know, they're struggling, but because they make a little bit of money, they're not eligible for SNAP. So increasing the income limits is just the other thing that I think would help the struggling families, empower them with their own, you know, funds to go and purchase their own food, and also help relieve the burden on the emergency feeding system to help fill the gaps, you know, that where the families can't go out and buy the food. So if we could just increase the access to SNAP, I think it would just help everybody.
Yeah, that's a great point, Caitlin, and that's something we keep coming back to, because that's the way that families have the most options to make their own choices and what's in the best interest of their families, to have those SNAP resources, as opposed to, you know, being dependent on so much of what we're doing to make sure that we kind of fill those gaps. Angelina, anything else at your end?
No, I mean, I feel like I've just had I feel very fortunate to have a great education from all of you directly from the front line. And I believe this is the beginning of a much longer conversation and working together, and I'm here. So I will, you have so much ahead of you. I know everything I'll be thinking about you in the months ahead, and I am standing by if I can help, but just a lot of respect and gratitude to all of you. And I'm so happy for all those children that they have you thinking about them and trying to find solutions, and all of those families. You know, you really are making such a huge difference to the lives of all of these families, and it's very nice to meet all of you.